faithfully conveying value, exploring great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, we're exploring the book titled Don't Be a Normal Fool. Nowadays, the annual e-commerce shopping festivals often catch people off guard. Think back. Have you ever spent a whole night glued to your phone, switching between, shopping apps to compare prices for that coveted item? Have you ever set an alarm just to grab coupons released at the top of the hour by shopping platforms? Have you ever added extra items just to meet the minimum order requirement? After all that effort for things you didn't really need, did you realize that what you bought wasn't much cheaper than usual and you ended up with a pile of unwanted stuff? You might say that everyone around me does this too. Yes, you're all normal people, and these actions are perfectly normal. But I must say, you're all normal fools. What is a normal fool? This concept was proposed by Shi Kaiyuan, a renowned behavioral decision scientist and the author of this book. Normal fools refer to the vast majority of people who make seemingly normal decisions that aren't actually rational. In today's book, the author uncovers decision-making pitfalls that appeared normal but are irrational and offers ways to avoid them or even leverage them so you can become a rational thinker instead of a normal fool. Ah, ah. The author, Shi Kaiyuan, is a renowned Chinese psychologist. He has a PhD in psychology from Yale University, is a tenured professor at the University of Chicago, and one of the world's leading behavioral decision scientists. In 2002, Nobel Economics laureate Kahneman dedicated 3 minutes in his acceptance speech thanking Shi Kaiyuan because Shi Kaiyuan's experiments demonstrated that human rationality is bounded. This finding greatly helped Kahneman in researching human decision-making in economic contexts. Based on everyday situations, I've distilled 7 common pitfalls from the book and 7 ways to avoid them for you. These pitfalls, summarized by the author as a behavioral decision scientist through extensive observation and experiments, are the fundamental patterns behind human decisions, akin to gravity causing an apple to fall. Just like this fundamental physical law, there are universal basic laws in human decision-making. Understanding these principles can help you make rational decisions. All right, let's dive into the first pitfall, the mental accounting trap. But first, a quick quiz. Suppose you went to Macau for a project and after 6 months of hard work, earned 100,000 yuan. Then a local friend suggests you try your luck at the casino. Would you go? Now, what if instead you visited Macau for fun and got lucky winning 100,000 yuan at the horse races? Then a friend suggests you try the casino. Would you go? I bet most wouldn't gamble away their hard-earned project money. But unexpected racetrack winnings, they'd spend those more freely. If this sounds like you, congrats. You're a classic normal fool. You've fallen into the mental accounting trap, subconsciously creating different money categories. So what exactly is mental accounting? It's a concept by Professor Thaler at University of Chicago. Basically, we mentally sort money into different accounts based on its source or amount, like hard-earned cash versus lucky windfall, or savings money versus spending money. Different mental accounts mean completely different spending behaviors. You'll hoard sweat-earned cash but splurge lucky money. But truth is, wages and windfalls are both your money with identical purchasing power. Economically identical, but beyond source, we also treat different amounts differently. Take Xiao Li, an ordinary office worker and classic moonlighter. His happiest time. Payday! He'll feast, shop, and splurge until broke before next month's salary. But when year-end bonuses arrive, suddenly he saves every penny. Why would bigger bonuses make him spend less? Because he assigns different mental accounts. Salary equals spending money, bonuses equals savings money. Classic spend small, save big mentality. Spending small, saving big. How do we avoid falling into the mental accounting trap? The method is simple. Tear down the barriers between different mental accounts and treat all income equally, no matter its source or amount. And less than not, because money has no memory. There's no need to label it differently. With mental accounts opened up, let's revisit those two earlier cases. So, what's the right approach? In the first case, the right choice for both scenarios is not to gamble at the casino, because whether it's earned money or winnings, both are increasing your wealth. In the second case, whether Xiao Li gets his salary or year end bonus, he should allocate some for savings and some for spending. And once you understand the mental accounting trap, you can even leverage it effectively. Ever had this experience? When you give your parents a big red envelope during Chinese New Year or their birthdays, they often hesitate to spend it and save it instead. This is actually parents setting large sums into a savings mental account. It's hard to convince parents to break mental accounting, but you can use this trap. Instead of giving one large sum, break it into smaller amounts given multiple times. Then parents see it as spending money. So after overcoming the first trap, can we achieve rational spending? No, that's far from enough. Normal fools also face a second trap, the transaction utility fallacy. It might sound a bit confusing, but it's incredibly common. The frenzy during e-commerce shopping festivals is the best illustration of this fallacy. Let's start with an example. During a shopping festival, Xiao Wang wants to buy a quilt. He's eyeing three types: standard double, deluxe double, and oversized deluxe double. Originally, he planned to just buy the deluxe double as it's sufficient because its thickness and width are just right. But as he's about to order, he finds a big promotion. All three quilts are only 400 yuan, down from their original prices of 500, 600, and 700 yuan. If he sticks to plan and buys the deluxe double, originally priced at 600 yuan, he saves 200 yuan. But if he buys the oversized deluxe, originally at 700 yuan, he saves 300 yuan. Oh, Xiaolong did the math and thought buying the oversized one was a better deal, so he ordered it right away. But after a month, Xiaowing regretted it because the quilt was too big, forcing him to buy two new duvet covers. Even worse, the quilt was too long. It kept dragging on the ground, getting all dirty, and he had to wash the covers constantly. So, both time-wise and money-wise, Xiaowing ended up paying more. In this case, Xiao Long saw the price and forgot his real needs. All he cared about was getting a better deal. The trap he fell into is called the transaction utility fallacy. This concept was also first proposed by Thaler, who introduced mental accounting. It refers to when people make spending decisions to make the whole transaction seem more effective and cost-effective. Due to being swayed by irrelevant factors, the urge for a good deal, plain bargain hunting, can actually cost you more. Let's dig deeper into Xiao Wang's case. Suppose the quilt's original prices weren't really 500, 600, and 700 yuan. Merchants set them to create the impression that, the quilts aren't cheap. That way, buyers think paying 400 yuan for a 700 yuan quilt is a steal. So they order without hesitation. So how do we avoid the transaction utility fallacy? It's simple. Just focus on the item's actual usefulness and its price. In other words, ask, is this useful to me? How much does it cost? Can I afford it now? Things like how much cheaper it is than the original price compared to similar items, or freebies for bulk buys shouldn't be your standards. In Xiaolong's case, besides the transaction utility trap from irrelevant factors, he was also hit by another pitfall, the separate versus joint evaluation fallacy. That's the third trap I'm introducing. What does that mean? Buying a quote was meant to be a separate evaluation. If only one type was offered, Xiaowang wouldn't have been influenced. But with three options at once, Xiaowang was forced into joint evaluation. Seeing the oversized deluxe double made the regular deluxe seem worse, so he picked the oversized one. Let's take another example. Xiao Zhang wants to buy a high-quality sound system for his newly renovated home. At the audio store, he's torn between two systems priced similarly. The first has a sleek design and good sound quality. The second looks outdated but has superior audio performance. After comparing repeatedly, Xiao Zhang decides on the second system. The older looking but better sounding one, he figures sound matters more than appearance for speakers. But after bringing it home, Xiao Zhang grows increasingly dissatisfied. It looks too ugly and clashes with his decor. Even the supposedly better sound now seems underwhelming. After reconsidering, he contacts the store for an exchange. When the new system arrives, he mutters, "This looks much better, and the sound's just as good." Why such different choices? Because in separate evaluation, people focus only on easily accessible traits. In joint evaluation, they compare harder to judge aspects. Two systems in store, that's joint evaluation. One system at home, that's separate evaluation. Here, appearance is easy to assess. Sound quality is harder. Seeing both in store, Xiaozhang ignored the easy part, looks, and focused on comparing the hard part, sound differences. At home, with just one system, he evaluated the easy part, appearance. Businesses exploit this fallacy to steer consumer choices. If their product beats competitors, they sell side by side to highlight advantages. If inferior, they avoid direct comparison in different channels. When both products are strong, separate channels to avoid nitpicking. When both are weak, sell together. Consumers will find relative strengths like picking the tallest dwarf. So how do we avoid the separate versus joint evaluation pitfalls? The best approach is gathering more information to make hard to evaluate factors easier to judge. Then compare across multiple dimensions, like in Xiaozheng's speaker case. Don't over-prioritize hard-to-judge sound quality. Factor in easily accessible appearance too. Multidimensional evaluation leads to better choices. All right, now let's explore the fourth pitfall: sunk cost and opportunity cost fallacies. Consider this example. A pharmaceutical company is halfway through developing a new drug, having already spent 5 million yuan on R&D. Then the boss learns a competitor is developing a similar drug. Based on preliminary research and sales models, the boss predicts continuing has a 90% chance of losing 5 million yuan and only 10% chance of profiting 25 million. If you were the boss, would you keep investing or pull out? You might think, we've already spent 5 million. Why not gamble? Maybe we'll be the lucky 10%. Let's analyze. The already spent 5 million is why the boss hesitates to quit. Originally, he planned to just buy one deluxe double-size quilt because its thickness and width were perfect. But as he was about to order, he found a big promotion. All three quilts, only 400 yuan, originally priced 500, 600, and 700 yuan. If he bought the deluxe double, originally at 600 yuan, he'd save 200 yuan. But if he bought the oversized deluxe, originally at 700 yuan, he'd save 300 yuan. Oh, Xiaowang calculated and thought the oversized was a better deal, so he ordered it immediately. But after a month, Xiaowang regretted it. The oversized quilt forced him to buy 2 new duvet covers. Worse, it was too long, dragging on the floor, getting dirty, forcing frequent washes. So Xiaowang ended up paying more, both in time and money. In this case, Xiaowang saw the price and forgot his real needs. All he cared about was getting a better deal. He fell into this trap called the transaction utility fallacy. This concept was also first proposed by Thaler, who introduced mental accounting. It refers to when people make spending decisions to make the whole transaction seem more effective and cost-effective. Due to being swayed by irrelevant factors, the urge for a good deal, plain bargain hunting, can actually cost you more. Let's dig deeper into Xiao Wang's case. Suppose the quilt's original prices weren't really 500, 600, and 700 yuan. Merchants set them to create the impression that the quilts aren't cheap. That way, buyers think paying 400 yuan for a 700 yuan quilt is a steal. So they order without hesitation. So, how do we avoid the transaction utility fallacy? It's simple, just focus on the item's actual usefulness and its price. In other words, ask, is this useful to me? How much does it cost? Can I afford it now? Things like how much cheaper it is than the original price compared to similar items or freebies for bulk buys shouldn't be your standards. In Shao Wang's case, besides the transaction utility trap from irrelevant factors, he was also hit by another pitfall, the separate disjoint evaluation fallacy. That's the third trap I'm introducing. What does that mean? Buying a quilt was meant to be a separate evaluation. If only one type was offered, Shaowan wouldn't have been influenced. But with three options at once, Xiaowang was forced into joint evaluation. Seeing the oversized deluxe double made the regular deluxe seem worse, so he picked the oversized one. Let's take another example. Xiao Zong wants to buy a high-quality sound system for his newly renovated home. At the audio store, he's torn between two systems, priced similarly. The first has a sleek design and good sound quality. The second looks outdated but has superior audio performance. So Jean compared repeatedly and finally decided to buy the second sound system. The second system has an outdated style but better sound quality. He thought sound matters more for speakers. Appearance doesn't matter. But after bringing it home, Xiao Zhang disliked it more and more. It looked too ugly and clashed with his decor. Even the sound, which he thought was better, didn't seem impressive anymore. After reconsidering, Xiao Zhang contacted the store to exchange it. When the new system arrived, he muttered, "This looks much better, and the sound's just as good." Why did Xiao Zhan make such different choices? Because in separate evaluation, people only care about easily accessible traits. In joint evaluation, they compare harder to judge aspects. The two systems in the store were joint evaluation. The single system at home was separate evaluation. In this case, appearance is easy to assess. Sound quality is harder. Seeing both in the store, Xiaozhang ignored the easy part. He concentrated on comparing the hard part, sound differences. At home, with just one system, he evaluated the easy part, appearance. Actually, businesses exploit this fallacy to steer consumer choices. If their product beats competitors, they sell side by side to highlight advantages. If inferior, they avoid direct comparison in different channels. When both products are strong, separate channels to avoid nitpicking. Because when two good things are together, consumers ignore the strengths and focus on flaws. And when both are weak, sell together. Consumers will find relative strengths, like picking the tallest dwarf. So how do we avoid the separate versus joint evaluation pitfalls? The best approach is gathering more information to make hard to evaluate factors easier to judge. Then compare across multiple dimensions, like in Xiao Zhan's speaker case. Don't over-prioritize hard-to-judge sound quality. Factor in easily accessible appearance, too. Multidimensional evaluation leads to better choices. All right, next we'll discuss the fourth pitfall, sunk cost and opportunity cost fallacies. Let's look at an example. A pharmaceutical company is halfway through developing a new drug project, having already spent 5 million yuan on R&D. At this point, the boss learns that a competitor is also developing a similar project through preliminary research and the company's sales model analysis. The boss predicts that if they continue the project, there's a 90% chance of losing 5 million yuan and only a 10% chance of profiting 25 million yuan. And if you were the boss, would you choose to keep investing or pull out immediately? Well, you might think we've already invested 5 million, why not give it a shot? Maybe we'll be the lucky 10%. Let's analyze this example. The already spent 5 million R&D cost is why the pharma boss hesitates and can't choose to quit. But a long commute is a variable bad thing. Enduring 3 hours every day is very painful. Beyond inaccurate judgments of gains and losses, good and bad things, people also fall into another pitfall when making decisions: overconfidence bias. This is the sixth pitfall I'll introduce. Most people tend to be overly confident when comparing themselves to others. An author once conducted a small survey. He interviewed a group of married women in Shanghai, asking them to assess the accuracy of the proportion of married men in Shanghai who have cheated at least once. The combined result from these women was that they believed over 50% of married men have cheated at least once. However, when the author asked each individually, they all thought the possibility of their own husband's cheating was zero. Why did such an assessment result occur? The first reason is that people have confirmation bias, meaning they only believe what they want to believe. Like the interviewed women, none want to believe their marriage is unhappy or their husband unfaithful. So they think their own husband has no possibility of cheating. Another example, someone wanting to buy a Volkswagen car only looks at forum posts praising VW or asks owners who bought VW how they feel, rather than asking why people who bought other brands didn't choose VW. They only want to believe the information they believe, automatically ignoring unfavorable information, so they naturally can't make accurate judgments. The second reason is that people ignore objective patterns. In the infidelity survey, since women estimated the cheating rate as high as 50%, how could the probability be zero for themselves? This completely defies probability theory. To escape the overconfidence trap, people need to consider fundamental patterns when judging things. Don't just focus on details or take biased information at face value. Don't mistake one-off events for universal truths. For example, when car shopping, gather information from multiple sources, both positive and negative reviews. Evaluate objectively. Say something good happens occasionally, like exceptional work performance or your child acing an exam. Recognize these aren't regular occurrences. Approach them and the 6 pitfalls we discussed with balanced perspective. We've covered pitfalls that trap us during decision making. The 7th pitfall emerges after decisions, during reflection. It's called hindsight bias. Pitfall. Take this example. Xiao Chen and his girlfriend drove out for fun. At a fork in the road, they couldn't decide left or right. His girlfriend said, "I think we should go left." Xiao Chen didn't respond and drove left. But after driving a while, they found only woods ahead. Clearly wrong path. Xiao Chen angrily said, "I knew we should have gone right. You gave bad directions. We're lost." But did Xiao Chen actually know to go right beforehand? No. He only claimed foresight after knowing the mistake, falsely believing he predicted correctly. Xiao Chen fell into the hindsight bias. This pitfall is when people retroactively believe they predicted outcomes before they happened, being Monday morning quarterbacks. Such people share a key trait: they never admit their original judgment was wrong, so they can't learn from mistakes. Worse, they struggle to view others fairly. If you succeed at something, they'll say, "Oh, I knew that would happen." This instantly diminishes your joy in the achievement. What's a way to correct the hindsight bias pitfall? A good method is to have them write down their predictions and reasons before things happen. After the event, verify to see if they were correct. After trying this a few times, people who like to be Monday morning quarterbacks will face up to their judgment abilities. All right, at this point, we've introduced all 7 pitfalls and 7 solutions. Let's review them together. The first pitfall is mental accounting. It means that people categorize money differently based on its amount and source. They set up different mental accounts. The solution is to break down the barriers between these accounts and treat all money equally. The second pitfall is transaction utility fallacy. It means that people always chase bargains when spending, ignoring their real needs, and often end up losing more time and money by penny pinching. The best solution is to focus only on the actual utility of what you're buying and whether the price is acceptable at the time. The third pitfall is the separate versus joint evaluation fallacy. People consider different factors in separate and joint evaluations. In separate evaluation, they often focus on more obvious differences. In joint evaluation, they consider less obvious differences more. To be more rational, people should gather as much information as possible in any evaluation state. The fifth pitfall is sunk cost and opportunity cost fallacy. When making decisions, people often overly focus on sunk costs but neglect opportunity costs. The correct approach is to forget about irreversible costs that have already happened and only consider future possible costs and benefits from the present perspective. The fifth pitfall is loss aversion fallacy, where people show different risk tendencies in different situations, wanting to gain safely and avoid losses as much as possible. To avoid this pitfall, the best method is to use perspective taking. The sixth pitfall is overconfidence bias, where people are often blindly confident in life, ignoring objective patterns. To avoid this pitfall, people need to, when making judgments, pay attention to some fundamental patterns beyond details, not take biased information for granted, and not treat one-off events as universal occurrences. The seventh pitfall is hindsight bias. The best way to avoid this pitfall is to write down predictions before things happen, then compare when they actually occur. Now, after learning about these seven pitfalls and how to avoid them, you still need to constantly remind yourself not to rely on intuition and habits and avoid being trapped by assumptions in daily life. All right, that's all for Don't Be a Normal Fool today. The reading notes are below the audio, and we'll see you tomorrow.